is Lisa, and I have social anxiety. Normally, I would prefer to just complain about this rather than actually doing something about it. Because let's face it, complaining is way more fun. And work is a 4-letter word. But last year, I decided to change that. I decided to give an impromptu speech in all 50 states here in the US. Thanks to COVID, a phrase no one has uttered up until this point, giving these speeches was as simple as visiting the Toastmasters website and clicking on a Zoom link. But throughout my entire public speaking journey, I've encountered a variety of communication challenges, which you'll see later. Let's just say that if you get a vicarious thrill from hearing about other social faux pas, you won't be disappointed. This speech will also chronicle the lessons I learned giving 50 speeches in 50 states and hopefully inspire others along the way. Because if this hermit crab can do it, you can too. But before I talk about my journey giving a speech in all 50 states, let's talk about the first impromptu speech I ever gave. It was 2016, and I was 25 years old. In a shocking departure from my normal routine, I decided to visit the library. There, I saw a sign for Toastmasters. Not our club, mind you, a different one. My mom had told me that Toastmasters was a group designed to help you improve your public speaking skills. As far as she knew, none of the speeches were about mastering the art of using a toaster, much to my chagrin. But as a shy person with a pathological need for attention, I was sold immediately. Or so I thought. I went into the meeting room and introduced myself. There, I was asked if I would like to participate in table topics. I agreed before I could second guess myself. An image of my younger self hopping from the hot tub into the comparatively freezing swimming pool flickered through my mind like the pulse of a dying firefly. But I was committed. I agreed. I decided to give a speech. And then I found out what the speech was going to be about. I was handed a canvas bag. And inside this canvas bag, there were a variety of kitchen implements clanging against each other. By this point, I was starting to sweat. What was inside that bag? Giant needles, implements of torture, a toaster that shot lasers at me every time I said the word Why had I agreed to do this again? My heart sank when I saw the object she handed me. A spoon. She wanted me to give an entire speech on a spoon. One-liners and spoonerisms were one thing, but this was just too much. But again, I was committed. I closed my eyes, opened my eyes, and focused all of my attention on the spoon. And then I began to not the calm, collected of a spoon bending telekinesis expert. Oh no, this was the panicked that can only be produced by a hyperventilating hermit crab. In between gasps, I think I said something about how useful spoons were for eating ice cream. Apparently, even thoughts of ice cream were enough to freeze my cognition in that moment. After what felt like an ice age, I returned to my chair, completely cherry-cheeked. The Table Topics master said something about how first-timers often look like they were going to faint when giving an impromptu speech, but I barely heard her. At that moment, I knew I was never giving another speech, especially not an impromptu one. I just couldn't handle the humiliation. It didn't matter that my story had ended before it had even started. I had my pride to consider. But, spoiler alert, my journey as a speaker did not end that day. Sure, I spent the next few months systematically squelching all thoughts of Toastmasters. I even made a point of visiting different libraries, praying I would never run into the people from that Toastmasters club again. But even so, I couldn't stop thinking about Toastmasters and what my life would be like if I learned to manage my social anxiety. I thought back to my younger days as a performer. I performed magic tricks, acted in a variety of school plays, and even rapped before my disbelieving chemistry classmates. I'd shown time and time again that I could manage my nerves when I was the center of attention. Why then couldn't I go back to Toastmasters? As you probably guessed, I needed a push. And that push came from the most unexpected source imaginable, a woman I had never even met, my mom's boss. My mom is a star employee, and her boss asked her to give a presentation sharing valuable strategies for success. My mom waited until her boss was transferred to another office and then conveniently forgot about it. For some reason, my mom's stubbornness felt like a personal challenge. And I told myself that if I go back to Toastmasters and face my humiliation head on, you can give that presentation. You can go to Toastmasters all you want, Lisa, but I'm still not giving that speech. Fine. But once you see how much fun I'm having, you'll want to join me. And just like that, I made a promise to myself and to my mom that I was going to face my fear, our fear, head on. But let's take a step back. I wasn't ready to face the people I'd humiliated myself in front of just yet. Because every time I humiliate myself, I seriously consider moving, just so I'll never have to see the witnesses to my disgrace again. When dealing with humiliation, it's best to err on the side of extreme caution. With that said, one of my most surprising takeaways from doing this 50 States, 50 Speeches challenge was this. Babbling incoherently is not a fate worse than death. I know, I was surprised I didn't spontaneously combust as well. But let's take the speech I gave in Maine, for example. Here, I was asked to talk about my most famous ancestor. And I'm going to be frank with you. I don't know anything noteworthy about any generation before my grandparents, which made it extremely difficult to give a speech. Thus, rather than struggling with a topic I wasn't familiar with, I decided to talk about the Bermuda Triangle instead. I can feel you all silently judging me, wondering what unearthly being possessed me to spew about such nonsense. But in my defense, I'd been learning about unsolved mysteries that day, and I felt like unloading my knowledge on anyone who would listen. While my speech was extremely random and off topic, I was still able to share something interesting with the group. But wait, how does this lesson apply to real life, you might be asking? Excellent question. I want all of you to think back to a time when you had a conversation and you felt disconnected. Maybe the other person was talking about the sentience of robot alien cyborgs, and you wanted to have a philosophical debate about why dust is a noun, not a verb. The point is this. Sometimes people are going to start talking and we are going to feel like walking. But instead of letting the other person zap away valuable brain cells on topics we don't care about, you can change the subject. Or, as the purple mattress commercial says, life can be a pain in the butt, but you don't have to stand for it. You can sit. Now that you know the world will not explode if you babble incoherently about the Bermuda Triangle on purple mattresses, let's talk about success. And no, I'm not talking about putting the suck in success. I'm talking about what happens when you give a speech that your fellow Toastmasters will tell their great grandkids about, or just their brain dead goldfish when they go home that night. But how do you give a successful speech, you ask? Simple. All you have to do is feel comfortable. Great. Lisa's just asked us to do the impossible. I hear you protesting. Next, she's going to ask us to meditate before bungee jumping over a pit of ravenous sharks. But don't worry, with my simple two-step process, you too can feel comfortable doing the impossible. Step 1, make yourself uncomfortable. Give your icebreaker. Ask an experienced speaker to mentor you. Give your 50 states, 50 speeches talk you've put off giving for an entire year. And most importantly, remind yourself that NBD doesn't just stand for nervous breakdown. It also stands for no big deal. Step 2, make yourself comfortable. Befriend people who share your goals. Revisit Toastmasters clubs you vibe with. Hit a baby penguin. Or just watch cute videos of them online every time you write a sentence of your big keynote speech. It's important to reward yourself along the way. In terms of Toastmasters clubs I vibed with, let's talk about my experience giving a speech in Washington State. There was something about this club in Seattle, notable Northgaters Toastmasters, that immediately made me feel welcome. Specifically, their sense of humor. I knew I was right at home when one of the members said, as part of the pandemic protocol, we now have a training called Unmute Me. With a single click of a button, you too can make yourself heard at your Zoom meeting today. And she wasn't the only member with a great sense of humor. The theme of the meeting was happy as a clam at high tide. Thus, it seemed only fitting that most of the table topics responders talked about their worst experiences at the beach and water parks. And I, of course, was no exception. My question was, would you rather forget your sunglasses or your sunscreen? Here's my response. Because I am very vain and prefer style over substance, and I regularly forget my sunscreen, that is definitely the item I would prefer to forget. That said, I really do need to remember to pack sunscreen for a change because I have the complexion of a cave-dwelling vampire. And every time I go outside, it just seems like I am completely sun-scorched. Let's take the time that I went to Waterworld as an example. Here, I was so badly sun-scorched, I looked like a mermaid that had been lobbed into a lobster pressure cooker. Seriously, I was so red, friends and family barely recognized me. Which, side note, I really could have used to my advantage and gotten up to something nefarious. I even could have escalated the situation and robbed a bank for all their clams. I don't advise it, but hey, it's an option. Amazing, isn't it? Some people make us feel comfortable mere moments after meeting them. It made me think that when we have guests at Toastmasters, it's our responsibility to set a positive tone. In the wise words of Maya Angelou, people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel. Let's make sure all guests leave 21st century Toastmasters having the nerve to be themselves. Let's show them how fun and humorous Toastmasters meetings can really be. Thank you. Now that you've learned more about my motivations for joining Toastmasters, as well as my reasons for doing this impromptu speaking challenge, you might be wondering what happened when I gave my final speech. Did I finally shed my socially awkward self and become a bubbly butterfly? Did I patent a new anti-anxiety medication that you too can use to overcome your fears of public speaking for a paltry $3 million? After giving 50 speeches in 50 states, I didn't feel the sense of accomplishment you might expect. I didn't shed my socially awkward self and become a bubbly butterfly. Nor did I learn the meaning of strife or why some people say tomato and others tomato, but no one says potato. Instead, I thought, now what? How else can I improve my public speaking skills? In other words, where do I go from here? As I zipped between Zoom meetings, I had many people ask me if I was going to document my journey on social media. But in order for you to understand my relationship with social media, I need to do some explaining. In my not so humble opinion, using social media is about as appealing as being a health inspector in the midst of a salmonella outbreak. I might be the only millennial without a Facebook account. And there's a reason why I'm giving my level 5 keynote speech before my level 4 social media presentation. With that said, I have filmed quite a few videos documenting my journey giving speeches across the US, including the questions I answered and the lessons I learned from them. I just haven't uploaded them to YouTube. I'm proud of what I accomplished, and I want to share my journey with others and inspire them to face their fears. I'm just not sure if social media is the best way for me personally to do that. I'm still a girl that has anxiety about keeping her computer creeping camera on. This brings me to an important point. I've been doing a lot of thinking about social anxiety recently, and I realize the people I most admire struggle with it as well. I admire them because they're open about their struggles, and they have a sense of humor about it. I want us to destigmatize the term social anxiety and just remember that people with social anxiety can accomplish many amazing things. Many of them become actors, songwriters, and yes, public speakers, but they may become more shy in conversational settings. I don't think that telling people to just relax or come out of their shell is the right approach. Rather, I feel that empathy and a willingness to listen go a long way when it comes to communicating with people with social anxiety. That way, we can understand why some people may be able to give speeches, but still be shy around cameras. In terms of where my Toastmasters career is going from here, I still plan on giving plenty of humorous speeches, both prepared and impromptu. I also recently visited a bilingual club and gave my first impromptu speech in Spanish. Additionally, I visited a club with several native Japanese speakers, and eventually I would like to give speeches in Japanese as well. I also have much I want to accomplish outside of Toastmasters, including becoming more comfortable playing guitar for audiences, as well as sharing my fantasy novel in progress with others. While some may see these goals as daunting, I find them exhilarating. I'm excited to see just how much further I can develop my public speaking and performance skills. I'm excited because the more speeches I give, the more I realize how little setbacks matter. Because if nothing else, I can always use them as inspiration for my next humorous speech. Madam Toastmaster.